Hi, I'm Tom Biebighauser, the owner of Wetland Restoration and Training. This video is going to show you what online resources are available that can help you identify areas where wetlands may be designed and built. You're going to see what services are available for free and which ones are worth paying for. So stay tuned. We're going to show you how to identify a small wetland project and a large wetland project on a large area of land.
I recommend installing Google Earth Pro on your computer. The program is free and allows you to view both current and historical aerial photos that show where fields and ditches are located. The aerial photos on Google Earth Pro are geo-referenced, so they may be used like a map without the distortion one normally sees along the edge of aerial photographs. Google Earth Pro also allows you to make maps and to import and export shapefiles that show the wetland projects you've designed and the wetland projects you've mapped using your smartphone or your GPS. You'll see an image of the Earth spinning on your screen when you open the app for Google Earth Pro. Once it stops spinning, we can go to the search bar on the upper left part of the screen, and we can enter in an address and look at the aerial photographs that are available. I've entered the address for the Mud Creek Wetland Preserve, owned and managed by the Wetland Trust in New York. The address is 109 Fish and Game Road in Hudson, New York. I'm going to press the search button. The Earth will stop spinning, and we will be zooming in on the area that we want to look at. So here's an overview of the Mud Creek Wetland Preserve, and it shows us the address, 109 Fish and Game Road. And I'm going to hold down on the left button of my mouse, and I'm going to pan the photo or move the photo so it's centered on a partially drained wetland in the center of the screen. We can see the black color of water, and then we can see what looks like trees around the partially drained wetland. And here's a ditch, a straight line ditch going to the south that's draining the wetland area. The images on Google Earth Pro are outstanding for identifying where areas are being farmed or have been farmed over the years. You can also spot ditches and partially drained wetland areas and areas of saturated soil. So we're going to move around this photo and find out what's available for us to indicate where wetlands could have been located. Well, I'm going to grab that left mouse button, hold it down, and pan a little bit to the south, and I'll show you with the white hand where some ditches are located. Here's some ditch areas. Here's quite a ditch. It has trees growing along the edge of it. And it looks like we have a ditch right here. Let's move the photo over. And here's an area of trees, a woodlot, and it looks like we have a wetland, an existing wetland inside of that woodlot area. And going to the north, I see some straight lines with trees growing along them. These are obviously ditches. Oh, and here's what water looks like. I'm using the scroll button on top of the mouse to zoom in, and I'm going to center on two constructed ponds. And you can see how dark the water is in these ponds. Then we can see the houses and the buildings and highways. Let's move to the south and center on that partially drained wetland again, scrolling out and centering it on the Mud Creek Wetland Preserve. Quite a valuable feature of Google Earth Pro is the availability of historic aerial photographs at no charge. Google Earth Pro typically has aerial photographs that go back 40 years. How do we view these? We go back up here to the top of the screen, and we look for the icon that has a clock face on it with a green arrow pointing to the left. I'm going to press that button, and a slider will appear. And this slider will show me where all the aerial photos are available of this area of land. And each vertical mark on the slider represents a different year that an aerial photograph was taken. Now, we're going to move this slider all the way over to the left by pushing down on the left button of the mouse, holding it down, and moving the slider all the way to the left. That doesn't look good. It's quite blurry. I've noticed that with Google Earth Pro, oftentimes the oldest aerial photographs are blurred, so this isn't doing us much good. Looking at the date, we're going to go to the bottom of the screen, imagery date, 12/30/1985. Well, we're not going to get anything out of this photo, so let's go back to the slider and let's push this right arrow button once. And that will bring in the next oldest aerial photo. And this one's quite a bit clearer. It's a black and white image, and it really shows the contrast and the detail. And looking at this, I can see many features of drained wetlands. Look at how the ditches show. These straight line ditches. Now see these parallel lines? Those are in a farm field, and I believe that that is the harvest pattern. That was maybe when they were cutting hay or when they were harvesting corn from the fields. Here is this partially drained wetland that's surrounded by trees. And then here we have the straight line ditch coming out of it. And here we have a drainage. This may have been caused by erosion, and it is draining. And then when we move the hand, we see that there's some straight line ditches. This is an interesting photo because it shows how intensively farmed the area was in 1994. And it also gives you an idea where some wet places may be located in the fields. These wet places may be existing wetlands, or they could be partially drained wetlands. So here's a shadow, a dark area, and this area is quite wet in 1994. Let's see what other aerial photos are available. Coming back to the slider, I'm going to push that right-hand button. Nothing changes. Here we have a photo that appears. It was taken on April 1st, 2004, and it's a poor quality color image, but oh, does it have the contrast. We can see individual trees in the partially drained wetland. We can see trees growing along the ditch, draining this wetland to the south. And then we see some other features on the land. For instance, right here, that looks like a drained wetland, but I've been there on the ground, and it's a knob, and it's rocky. Here to the north, that looks like a drained wetland, but again, it isn't. It's a knob, it's quite rocky. Notice this dark area. This is an area of saturated soil in a farm field. It indicates that this wetland has been partially drained. Same goes for over here. We have these dark colors which show us where wetlands have been partially drained. Now, there's a really good feature that shows us where wetlands are being farmed. I'm going to zoom in on it. See these dark parallel lines? These are called dead furrows. In between the dead furrows is lands, L-A-N-D-S. And this is where a wetland was reshaped for farming. And what happened here is that they were plowing these dead furrows and moving and shifting that soil to the center so they could farm the lands. The pattern is quite widely spaced compared to when you're harvesting crops. So here we have a dead furrow, a land, a dead furrow, a land, a dead furrow, a land. Here's another dead furrow. Here is a ditch, and here's another ditch. So this area was obviously wetland at one time, and it would be a really good place to look at on the ground to see if we could build additional wetlands here. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit here, and this pattern looks like a mowing pattern. Maybe this was an orchard at one time. Coming over here, we see some trees growing in the center of this field. That could indicate the area is wet and they're not able to farm it, they're not able to mow it. Again, that could be a good place to look at for restoring a wetland area. Well, let's see what else is available. Coming back up here to the slider, I'll press that button again. Nothing changes. Here we have a newer aerial photograph, and this one was taken in 2006. And we can see the trees growing up around the partially drained wetland. We can still see the ditches. We can see mowing patterns in the fields here. And maybe trails left from livestock. It's quite possible. But this photo doesn't show the darkened areas that would be saturated soils. It just doesn't have the detail. So let's look at another aerial photo. We'll keep moving through these. Here's one that's washed out. This one isn't giving us much for important information, so we're going to keep looking. Oh, here's a very detailed aerial photo, but it was taken during the summer, and we really have trouble seeing a lot of the ditches, any wet areas in the fields. Now this area looks like it was wet. This area looks like they're having trouble farming it. This would be a good place to look at for designing and building wetland areas. We're going to move all the way through the most recent photo. While these photos are really good for getting you into the ballpark where it may be possible to design and build a wetland, they do not show you contour maps, which is a great disadvantage. Even though Google Earth Pro will give you elevations above the ground as you move the cursor, see the elevation tab down here? It'll give you elevations. It doesn't give you these 1-foot contour lines that are so helpful for finding flat areas where we can design and build wetland areas. You may also obtain old aerial photographs from USGS Earth Explorer. The United States Geological Survey maintains this site, and the photographs that they have available, there's no charge for them. When you visit their site, you're asked to submit information to open an account with them, and there's no charge for this account, but allows you to have access to the maps and the aerial photos that they have available. I personally don't use USGS Earth Explorer very much. The reason being is that the aerial photos that are available are not georeferenced. You get this large aerial photograph, you're trying to figure out where your site is, and because they're not georeferenced, you can't type in addresses or use coordinates or do any type of mapping with it. Another problem is the controls on the site. They're really a challenge to learn how to use. They lock up fairly often, but you may have success using this site and may want to give it a try. If you're looking for really old aerial photographs that are also georeferenced, then I recommend going to historicaerials.com. I use this site quite often. You do have to pay for the service, but the images you get are really useful in identifying places where you can design and build wetland areas. This aerial photograph was taken in 1952. It shows the Mud Creek Wetland Preserve near Hudson, New York. I purchased this aerial photo from historicaerials.com, and it was worth it. I can see so many features of wetlands being farmed on this photograph. First of all, I want to point out to you the pattern of orchards. So here's where orchards are. The trees are in nice rows. All these different orchards in the area, probably apple orchards, in the area. And we can see the drained wetland here. Here, it looks like there isn't much of any water in it, and there is no ditch going to the south. That deep ditch had not yet been dug. Now, moving over here to the east, I see a farm pond. This looks like a natural wetland in more recent aerial photographs, but here it sure looks like a constructed farm pond. But look at the different colors in the farmed fields. I'm not sure what crops were being raised, but I see light grays and dark grays, and again, I can see all these different ditches. So this landscape was greatly modified. If you look really close, you can see what is possibly the dead furrows from this land's pattern of farming wetlands right here. This aerial photograph was taken in 1956. It also shows the Mud Creek Wetland Preserve, and I purchased this from historicaerials.com. This photo has more contrast than the 1952 photo. I can clearly see saturated soil in the farmed fields. And what we're looking at here are wet spots that were not completely drained. And this shows us where wetlands have been drained for farming. Also, look at the dead furrows, the presence of the lands pattern. This clearly shows wetlands that are being farmed. And here we see almost a checkerboard pattern. I'm not sure if all of that is from drainage. Part of it's from drainage, part of it's probably how they harvested the crops. You can look at this farm pond in the northeast corner. It looks like there's quite a bit of vegetation growing. It's not holding water very well when the photograph was taken. We can see the pattern of the orchards. We can see the trees that are growing along Mud Creek here. And of course, the ditches. The ditches are everywhere. And the ditches are a clear sign that wetlands have been drained on the landscape. And we can see all these light colors where areas are being farmed. So this area looks very well suited for designing and for building wetland areas. And it would be worth looking at every aerial photograph that's available of this area to see what can be done to improve the landscape for wildlife and for fish. I recommend that you visit the website for the Natural Resources Conservation Service and go to the page for the Web Soil Survey. The Natural Resources Conservation Service has detailed soil information on 95% of the counties in the United States. And this information can really help you identify good places to look at for designing and building wetland areas. I'm going to press the button that says Start WSS, and it will bring up a menu. I'm going to enter an address and see what's available. So here's the address button, and we're going to type in 109 Fish and Game Road, and that's going to be in Hudson, New York. And it appears. That was fast. Now, in order to move this map, you need to come up here to the toolbar and pick up the hand. Then you can hold it down and pan that map. And we're going to center on the area, which is the Mud Creek Wetland Preserve. I'd like to see what soil mapping units are available and found within the Mud Creek Wetland Preserve. So I'm going to move this map around. I'm going to go back to that hand, which is pressed in, move this map around and center it on the Mud Creek Wetland Preserve. And now I'm going to go over here to the top and pick up what's called Area of Interest, AOI, press that button, and then what I can do is outline the Mud Creek Wetland Preserve. So now I've outlined my area of interest, and we can see that the Mud Creek Wetland Preserve is now crosshatched. Now I'm curious to know what type of soils the map units are found in here. So I'm going to come up here to Soil Map and press that tab, and it's generating a map, and it has the abbreviations of each soil mapping unit on it. And we can see here that the majority of the soil mapping units within the Mud Creek Wetland Preserve have the initial KNA on them. Let's find out what KNA means. I'm going to come over here to this key on the left-hand side and move it until I see KNA. KNA is Kingsbury and Rhinebeck soils, 0 to 3% slopes. That's good. It's looking good so far. But what soil textures are they? Well, let's find out. I'm going to go ahead and press on the blue colored lettering for the soil mapping unit. And it's going to come up with a table. And this table is specific to the KNA soil mapping unit, the Kingsbury and Rhinebeck soils. And I'm going to page down here, and I'm looking for the typical soil profile. The typical soil profile is 0 to 11 inches is silted clay loam. That's really good for building wetlands. We go a little bit deeper, 11 to 29 inches, there's clay. And 29 inches to 60 inches below the surface, stratified clay to silt loam. This is looking good. Unfortunately, the soil information doesn't go any deeper than 60 inches, but what we see on the surface looks promising. So right away I'm thinking this might be a good place to look at for building a wetland area.
One of the most effective ways to identify areas where wetlands may be designed is to use ArcGIS Pro. ArcGIS Pro is a desktop GIS software that was developed by Esri, and this replaces their well-known ArcMap software. Let's look at a series of maps showing the Mud Creek Wetland Preserve, and these maps were prepared by Gabriel Deo and Michelle Herman with the Wetland Trust in New York, and they used ArcGIS Pro software. These images are fantastic for showing where to spend time on the ground designing wetland projects. This detailed map shows contour line elevations on the Mud Creek Wetland Preserve. The elevation of the ground changes 1 foot between each contour line. This map is very helpful for finding places where you may be able to build a wetland. We've zoomed in on an area that has great potential for restoring wetlands on the Mud Creek Wetland Preserve, and what we're looking for is wide spaces between the 1 foot contour lines in the fields that are being mowed or where crops are being raised. And what person can do is to circle these large areas where there's no more than a 2 foot change in elevation to examine on the ground and to test for wetland restoration potential. ArcGIS Pro provides the user with imagery, hybrid, ortho photos to use as base maps. These hybrid images, though, are not as detailed as the ortho images available for free from New York State. The New York State Ortho Imagery program is outstanding. Counties are flown every 4 to 5 years, and the quality and the resolution of the ortho images are the gold standard, according to Michelle. Michelle and Gabrielle will download tiles of the DEMs. These are the digital elevation models, and then use an ArcGIS Pro contour tool to convert the DEMs to contours. They use the most recent DEM data available from New York State for an area they're mapping. In some areas, only 1 meter contours are available, so Michelle can change the 1 meter resolution to 1 foot contours and is generally pleased with the results. New York State has tabs for different years of ortho images that can be used as base maps. Here are some maps showing aerial photographs that were taken in 1942, 1994, and 2021. You can see the areas that were farmed and the ditches that were dug many years ago. This map shows existing wetlands identified by the National Wetland Inventory and wetlands designated by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the DEC. This information is of great importance when designing wetland projects, so you know where and when permits may be needed prior to construction. This map combines a recent ortho image, 1 foot contours, and an NRCS soil mapping units. You can narrow your search for areas where wetlands can be built by identifying areas where there's no more than a 2 foot change in elevation and the texture of soil is high in clay. This map shows 1 foot contours and soil drainage classes that are identified by the NRCS. Somewhat poorly drained soil is shaded in purple. Moderately well-drained soil is shaded in green, and well-drained soil is shaded in pink. The map you're looking at uses 1 foot contours and shading to show slope. The steep ground is colored in red, and the nearly level ground is colored in green. I had the privilege of working with personnel from the Wetland Trust to design a large wetland reestablishment project at the Mud Creek Wetland Preserve. The map you're looking at shows the wetlands that we planned to build, and it also shows the wetlands that had been already delineated on the site that were avoided by the project. In 2022, the Wetland Trust embarked on an ambitious program of restoring wetlands on the Mud Creek Wetland Preserve, and you can see the results of this effort. They are amazing. The online resources I've shown can help you identify areas that may be suitable to build wetlands. Please remember that these office resources should never replace the time spent on the ground examining areas for signs of wetland drainage, recording elevations, and digging test holes. I've seen many wetland projects fail because the individuals attempted to design the project in the office, often because they feared sweating and getting bitten by ticks. One must be willing to crash through the brush to design and build a successful wetland. This has been Wetland Restoration and Training. I'm Tom Biebighauser, and I invite you to subscribe, to like, and to share this video. And please visit my website listed below and read the books that I've written about wetlands and how you can design and build them. Thank you, and good luck building wetlands.